This is just B-roll footage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go for that. I'm gonna go to the chair again. Are we doing the same thing?
I want to grow out my hair, so yeah, if you could trim it, that would be. Oh, how do I turn this light on? Oh, there's a screw at the bottom.
You have to plug it in first.
Oh yeah, it's not plugged in. Where is the switch? It's behind Ashish. Do you remember what level the brightness was at? Yeah, I think this is good. This isn't the max, right? Yeah. See, that's like too bright. Is that good? Yeah. So, yeah, Avi, you can begin reading. Yeah. Okay. I'm just finding out where we are. We're at the description of the she-wolf when, like, her nature of, like, breeding. Oh. I'll just start here. And, just for the sake of the video, now it's time for Anand's haircut, and, Ashish is... You know what, actually I'm gonna restart that introduction. Okay, now that I've finished my haircut, it's now time for Anand's haircut. Leaving off where we were last, I'm gonna start reading now. I said, "You're Virgil, aren't you? You're that rainmaker who creates a torrent of speech that turns into a riptide." Then I felt bashful and hung my head. The best and the brightest in the class of poets, I read you and loved you and hope that what I learned from you will now serve me well. First of all, the authors and master of me, I borrowed from you, and to you I owe a debt for the music that's brought me success. Can you see the beast I had to flee? Can you save me from her? You, Mr. Ubermensch, you, Mr. Man of the world, I'm shaking with fear. When he saw that I was now in tears, he said, "In that case, you have to take a different route, to escape this place that is only rock and sandy road." The beast that drove you back and made you cry ends the life of any who try to pass her on their way through. She's insane and insatiable. She eats more, and that just makes her more malignant and craving. She kills all that she comes in contact with, all with whom she comes. She takes many to her bed, and many more are coming until the day the big dog arrives and deals her an agonizing death. The dog doesn't need property or money, but lives on knowledge, love, and truth. He'll be born between two layers of felt. Do you want to stop there or keep reading? Well, I guess, unless you have some commentary on what we've read so far, I'm fine with still going, because for the most part, I was just repeating what was already... No, like, I haven't seen too many deviations. The first, is actually him calling, Virgil, Mr. Ubermensch, Mr. Man of, what did he call him? Mr. Man of the World. Yeah, Mr. Man of the World. Mr. Worldwide. Yeah. Yeah, dude. Low-key, Virgil is Pitbull. Wait, so who is the dog in this metaphor? Okay, the dog doesn't need property or money, but lives on knowledge. He's the greyhound, remember? Right, but, like, who is that supposed to represent in, like, the rest of the Inferno? Well, like what idea or principle does the greyhound represent? Like, in the notes of the Mandelbaum edition, they had a number of reasons, but what is... And so it's, like, completely up for interpretation. Uh-huh. But I am inclined to believe that he's just talking vaguely about some force, some, like, phenomena that will create change. I see. And so that's why I think that the greyhound doesn't necessarily represent a person, but rather like a movement. Right.
Or like a paradigm shift.
Right. You know, it's interesting that you say that. I actually asked this because I didn't want to accidentally, like, mistake this as, you know, interpretive kind of, you know,
Like you didn't want it to actually be about someone specifically, as
Yeah,
opposed to like
yeah.
you giving what you think. it should
Exactly.
be.
Because to me, what's so fascinating is that the dog is characterized as like having knowledge, love, and truth, and it's also, it seems to be that the dog represents in a lot of ways the ENFJ personality type. Because like if you think about it, that's basically what it's saying. It's like the dog doesn't need property or money, but lives on knowledge, love, and truth. That's basically like the entire like ethos of the of, or is it pathos? I don't know. I want to say ethos of the ENFJ personality type.
So for members of our audience that aren't familiar with MBTI, can you give us a small description of what an ENFP?
You mean ENFJ?
Oh, you said ENFJ?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, I can give a quick summary of that information.
Yeah.
So basically, the ENFJ personality type is similar to the INFJ, and I'm sure that the INFJ is probably more well known. I mean, it's also interesting that the other individual, the she-wolf, is mentioned, because in some ways the she-wolf could represent a an unhealthy INFJ, but I would need to look into that more. I would need to look into that from like a metaphorical and also like contextual and literary standpoint. But I mean, that's just a at this point it's just a conjecture, because it would be cool if that was the case, but I have no, you know, evidence as of yet. You know, it's just an idea that I just thought of. But basically, the ENFJ is similar to the INFJ in that they share the same functions, but the ENFJ is an extroverted version. So the INFJ's cognitive functions, and if you need like a introduction into like cognitive functions, or even like the basics of like the Myers-Briggs and Jungian psychological type theory, I would check out several people on YouTube. One of them would be Joyce Mang's channel called Type Talks, where she interviews like groups of people who all share the same personality type and ask them like questions that help others to kind of get a sense of like, you know, how these different types think and how they interact and what they kind of value, and basically like their style of communication, their style of, you know, their general idiosyncrasies. So I would check out Joyce Mang, and then I would also recommend the channel. I don't know his last name, but his first name is Harry. He has the channel Cognitive Personality Type, or CPT as he refers to it, and he has an interesting take on Jungian psychology, and I'm very intrigued by his, because it's a slight variation from, I think, the standard way of viewing it, and it's, in some ways I think that there's validity to his way of thinking about it, and other ways of thinking about it. And I mean, that's exactly the thing, is like the patterns kind of, you know, the way that you rationalize it, it still has a consistency in the logical process. And in that way, I think that, you know, logically you can come to the same and conclusions based on his theory or others that I'm going to mention. And so the other people that I would recommend would be C.S. Joseph. I would say that he is really good at kind of explaining the. I don't know. Get the sense that he has a more experiential kind of insight into the types, but he also does a very good job of looking at it from an application, applying the theory as well. And he has an extensive amount of videos on his channel. Like he has like 17 seasons or something, and it's just like on different videos, all kind of looking at the different kind of dimensions of MBTI. And I think that like as a fellow ENTP, that's what his type is and what my type is as well. It really that was really like helpful for me to watch, to just see how his frameworks of understanding are. And it's also because of the nature of like ENTPs and introverted thinking with extroverted intuition that kind of creates a three-dimensional image of an idea through the acquiring of different perspectives on that topic, and kind of like the rendering of that three-dimensional concept into three dimensions, and then I'd say another person who is worth checking out, who I think his name is Michael Pierce, and Michael Pierce also has his own kind of perspective on the personality types and the theory, and he is also equally as interesting and fascinating. In terms of like figuring out the basics at first, I would probably start with a combination of C.S. Joseph and CPT, as well as Type Talks, just because those, at least for me, it kind of like I don't know, it kind of explains it in a more layman's kind of way, and also provides a bit of a subjective TI kind of interpretation, which to me as a TI user is really helpful, because it basically sees like how their logic works, and then well, at least for CBT and C.S. Joseph. And then Joyce's channel is really helpful because it offers a kind of a TE source in a sense, because you can kind of apply your understanding of it to her videos and to see how it aligns, because it's kind of objective data. I'd say that's like the Type Talks is like more of the objective data that I use in my kind of research process. Because it has less to do with like them kind of teaching a lesson, and more so just you observing it, the interactions themselves, and drawing the patterns and conclusions through that. And then yeah, so that was a lot. Definitely a tangent.
I have a question about the nature of, so you talked about like the object,
Okay, yeah, we can talk about that.
and you talk about how TE is like an objective logic,
Mm-hmm.
and you talk about how TI is a subjective logic,
Right.
and that does make sense.
Right.
Given Jung's like description of extroversion and introversion. But like, explain to me how subjective logic looks like.
Well, I think that for us, it's so familiar to us that it's like kind of like your nose. You don't even notice that it's, or no, sorry. It's kind of, actually, it's interesting that you mentioned this, because this was a way of thinking about it that I got from watching I think a video by Michael Pierce, where he described people's kind of ironically funny blind spot of their dominant function, because they use it so often that they aren't even like, they're almost like they're doing it unconsciously. and he compared it to the process of like your legs and like the act of walking, because like we're so used to walking that we don't even consider it, but at the same time we still are choosing how we walk, and we're choosing the direction that we walk in. And so there's this kind of ability that we have to manipulate it, on like a, you know, with a relative amount of like conscious effort. And then the inferior function he describes is something that is unconscious almost. So it's like it's more similar to like your heart beating. It's not like you can like control like your like the beating of your heart. Your heart will simply react based on like the situation. You are not like exerting a kind of like conscious control over that process. Does that make sense?
I really like the analogy that you use, because let me collect my thoughts. You can keep going if you had more to say.
Yeah, so I guess like I wanted to set up this kind of this framework of understanding before I discuss introverted thinking, in order to kind of pose to you the possibility that it is something that you are so innately like in tune with that you don't even notice that you're doing it, and to like be aware of that, you know, that reality. And so basically introverted thinking is like the logical process by which you are like thinking about no, I don't like that, the way that I'm describing it. So subjective logic. So basically, it's kind of like a framework. It's like, it's a framework of understanding that you use, and I think that it might be better or simpler to explain it in comparison, or in contrast to extroverted thinking. So extroverted thinking, this is just like the impression that I get, but extroverted thinking is like more so like in tune with how to get things done in the physical world. So it's like how do I so it's like basically like when you're filming a project, it's like what are the things that we need in order to like you know, from start to finish execute the project. And TI can also reach that same conclusion, but it takes a bit of a, you know, a kind of internal consulting of your frameworks before. Extroverted thinking is almost like automatic. Like you can just kind of see how you would be able to do that thing in the external world. And the relationship that extroverted thinking has differs based on what perceiving function it's paired with. So with NI, it'll look different. That's with the INTJ, and with SE, it'll look different. That's with the ESFP and the ISFP. And then with NE, it'll look different as well. That's for the ENFP and the INFP. And it'll also look different with SI. That's for the ISTJ and the ESTJ. But if you notice, all of those types have a kind of, they have a level of kind of, I think if I were to characterize it, it's basically the trait that society values the most, which is just a kind of like getter done type of mentality, where like you are able to externalize your plans and kind of like reach a kind of actualization of your will. And in the other direction, introverted thinking is more so just how you kind of conceptualize the world in a logical way. So it's like the idea and understanding that society is kind of structured in this way where you have cities and government officials and you have different roles within society that help with the maintenance and the kind of flow and growth and I don't know, just like the upkeeping of society's needs, and basically having this kind of in like internal logical framework of that makes sense to you of why it is that way and like how that works in a very like intimate level with the object that of what it is. And so that looks very different, for example, between like the ISTP and the INTP, because that one is leading with extroverted sensing, whereas the other one is leading with extroverted intuition, and it'll look different with the INFJ, and the what's the last one? Oh yeah, the ISFJ. And so yeah, like basically they each have their unique signature and how they use their value function, which the value functions are either thinking or feeling. So let me know if that made sense, or I can try and explain it a different way.
Well, yeah, maybe one more time.
Okay, can you help me figure out which part you were not able to you weren't like it wasn't making sense?
I would say like I didn't really understand the connection between the types that you were naming.
Oh, you mean like how they use TI differently to one another?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I can go into that. Yeah. So if you look at the ISTP, they are leading, or the ESTP, their perceiving function, which will either be like sensing or intuition, their perceiving function is extroverted sensing, which means that they're in tune with their physical like reality, and they're like kind of using a lot of their cognitive brain power in order to perceive that like objective physical reality, or not physical but like objective reality that they are perceiving through the senses, through their senses, like, you know, because it's sensing, right? Like and so in senses that means like they're focusing, like hyper focusing on the details of their five senses, and it's facing in an outwards direction. So that means that when they look at things and see things, they're noticing the finite details of everything. And so what this means for the ISTP and ESTP is that they are looking out at their external environment with great detail and simultaneously applying or they're not applying, but they're seeking to kind of they're seeking.
I'm gonna let you in.
No, nobody let me in. She said no. There was a lady who brought her client. Where's your key?
Hmm?
Where's your key?
What key?
Your salon key.
What do you mean?
Where's your salon key?
What do you mean? Oh, where did I leave it?
Outside.
Oh.
So should I wait outside because it's crowded over here?
I mean, you guys are welcome to, but it might be a bit.
No, I'm coming here with some sofa or something over here to sit down. There, no, somewhere.
Actually, I'm done with Anand's hair,
Oh, you're
so.
done. Should I do mine or should I go home and come some other time?
No, yours will take less than a couple minutes. But you can actually, what is it? The last door on the right. You can sit in there.
Okay.
Where was I? Oh yeah. So basically they are, while looking through the perceiving function of extroverted sensing, they are trying to develop a introverted kind of framework to what they're sensing. But the interesting part is that for the ICP and ECP, their introverted thinking framework is tied to a introverted intuitive lens, which means that it will not have a kind of basically like the way to compare the way that people think about things if they're using like a TI NI circuit versus a TI SI circuit is that TI SI is kind of like you're using building blocks in order to kind of like form concrete memories that then create a like panoramic sense of the idea, whereas with TI NI it's like you're trying to boil the essence of what the concept is to its, or you're trying to boil the thing down to its very essence for what a concept is, and you're like kind of trimming the fat and kind of just creating a universal kind of understanding of it. Does that make sense?
So like you get rid of So would you say that it's like essential in a practical way, like in terms of how it trims the fat? Like it's like,
it's just trying to get to the very like core of an idea.
But like, is the nature of that essence practical in nature? Like, what is the nature of the essence that it holds on to?
I'd say that it would probably be something like an absolute truth. It's something that would be able to fit many different situations because it has a universal truth to it. But I mean, that doesn't mean that, you know, just because that is the like nature of it, that it is an absolute truth. But that is what it is striving to do. It is striving to create an absolute truth.
So like, what are some examples of things that would apply to that definition of being an absolute truth?
I guess like because SI is kind of being applied to TI is being applied to NI for the ESTP with SE as the dominant perceiving function. What this means is that they're trying to boil down the essence of like what is actually being perceived in like a very like in the present moment kind of way. So it's basically like if you are like taught by your parents that like I guess I'll do like a kind of character exploration. So looking at like Jaime Lannister, his entire life he is kind of told that he is like the prince, and he is like a part of the noble ruling class, and that as a result, like he it's not that because the thing is, he is still kind of like critical about things, but the things that he's critical about are actually related to the kind of morality of everything, if that makes sense. But basically, you get the sense that Jamie, he believes that the way the world is kind of that, like the world is a messed up place, and it just so happens that like the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. But then his entire character development has to do with the kind of humanizing of you know, the different castes within the world, and his kind of coming to his like the through the trial of experience, he is exposed to a different like a different reality that calls into question his previously determined assumptions. And so basically his previously determined universal assumptions is kind of an example of TI and NI at work with SE. Does that make sense?
You want that?
Yay. Alright, we can pause this and then we can like